Hey guys, welcome back. Season 2 of Halo Infinite has just dropped, and with it begins Halo Infinite's live service story, the kind of narrative that 343 are going to be telling on a season-by-season basis, and with Season 2, we got two technically new cutscenes that begin this story, so in this video, let's break it down. Now, it seems as though this kind of live service story is based around the Academy. At least, the Academy is its anchor point. It's looking like a lot of the main events are going to be taking place in the Academy. And as such, because we don't know when the Academy is set precisely, we don't know precisely when this cutscene or this story is set, at least yet. It could be like early 2560, so after Shadows of Reach but before Infinite's main campaign, or it could be set during Infinite's campaign, or after it, we don't know for sure. The only piece of evidence that we have that gives us a rough time frame is that it says that this cutscene is set after the defeat of Cortana, so it has to be after December of 2559 at the earliest. So, diving into the cutscene, it opens with Spartan Hugh Din and Spartan Sigrid Eklund, two Spartan 4 headhunters, returning to the Avery J. Johnson Academy of Military Science, aka the Academy, to meet with Commander Agryna, of whom apparently came up, presumably going through the Spartan 4 program, with Hugh Din. They arrive in a severely damaged Banished Phantom, and Din is injured. The two had been on a recon operation, investigating Banished activity at an old UNSC fleet depot on the colony of Camber. Now, Camber was a human colony, home to key manufacturing plants for Navy fleet materials, and acted as a key part of the war effort against the Covenant. However, in 2542, the Fleet of Particular Justice, led by the one and only Vengeful Vadam, the Arbiter, discovered Camber, invaded it, and glassed it. The only appearance that we've had of Camber so far was in the Halo 2 Anniversary terminals. This is the first time since literally 2014 that it's been mentioned. So, as a part of their recon op, Din and Eklund were scouting out the Banished operations on Camber. They'd managed to bring the ship manufacturing facilities back online and had also added their own ship-breaking gear to harvest the carcasses of UNSC ships for materials for their own fleet. And the facility in particular that Din and Eklund were scouting out is in fact the new BTB map, Breaker. This will be very important in a minute. During this operation though, Din saw one of his opportunities to improvise. This opportunity being a gap in the Banished security protocols. However, when he interfaced with these protocols, a Banished AI appeared named Erratus and attacked them. Now, when he says attacked, I presume he means that he alerted the entire base to the Spartans' presence. I can't really see how else an AI would attack. The two Spartans fled, fighting their way out of the facility and hijacking a Phantom. However, the AI followed them onto the Phantom and tried to lock it down. So, Din gave it a more attractive target, the AI chip that inserts into his Mjolnir. However, given that A, this was a Banished brute AI, so it was already kinda crazy, and also B, the fact that it's called Erratus, which basically means enraged, this proved to be quite harmful. In plugging Erratus into his Mjolnir, he seemed to give the Banished AI some degree of control over his armor, which he used to torture the Spartan, which is of no surprise given that it's a Banished brute AI. And before we continue, let's talk about that specific detail, a Banished AI. Now, this might seem kind of weird because obviously the Covenant weren't really ones for AI. They never really relied on them. They did have them, the Covenant did have AIs, but they used them very sparingly, and they weren't anywhere near as intelligent as human or, God forbid, foreigner ancillars whatsoever. It's also noted that this is the first Banished AI ever encountered by humanity, so clearly these things are still rare even for the Banished. That said though, in very typical Banished fashion, they like to do things differently, especially when compared to the Covenant. Now, as for the origins of this AI, Erratus, I have a theory. So, the other day, during 343's Season 2 livestream, this small clip played halfway through, depicting at least what I think is a private AI development corporation, a human one, called Luxveluspa, having one of their facilities raided by the Banished. Now, along with being physically raided by the Banished, I think, it also seems as though they're succumbing to a Banished cyber attack, with their firewall being compromised and their systems breached. During the breach, which is confirmed to be brute in origin, core files are transferred out of the system, and an intact matrix core is taken, which to me sound like very key components of an artificial intelligence. So, adding all that together, I think what we're seeing here with Erratus is basically a reverse-engineered Banished AI made from the remnants of a human AI, which is rather interesting, and obviously that very much fits the Banished theme of taking another faction's technology and materials and reverse-engineering it to their benefit. However, not only is the existence of a Banished AI a big detail, but what this AI was guarding is also a very big detail as well. It was guarding an archive, and apparently the Banished's entire operation on the colony of Camber is an effort to seek information hidden within that archive, presumably beneath the surface of Breaker. Now, I think it goes without saying, but this archive is more than likely going to be Foreigner in origin, especially if it's buried beneath the surface of a human colony. I mean, come on, at this point, that's just par for the course with Halo. Maybe this archive is why the Arbiter glassed the planet in 2542? Glassing beams are essentially excavation beams at the end of the day, so maybe he was looking for it, but for whatever reason, couldn't find it. Unfortunately, we know very, very little about the invasion of Camber in 2542, so we don't know why or even how the Arbiter found that colony, but I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being why. Now, although it wouldn't make perfect sense, given that the Foreigners purged all traces of the Endless from pretty much every archive in existence, it still wouldn't surprise me all that much if this archive does end up containing something about the Endless, which ends up being why the Banished are looking for it. Who knows though, at this point that's just entirely a guessing game. All we know right now is that there's an archive on Camber, presumably beneath the Breaker facility, that the Banished are looking to go into and seek some kind of information from. But that doesn't change the fact that Erratus is still very much inside Din's head and threatens to kill him, and so Agryna comes up with a plan to fix that. She uploads the schematics of the Breaker facility on Camber to the combat training simulations for Spartans to train on, just the canon version of multiplayer, and her plan is to have it act as an open door for Erratus. Because the Breaker facility is Erratus' facility, her plan is to have as many Spartans as possible execute simulations on the facility schematic to essentially piss the AI off and bait him into the simulation so they can shut the door behind him and trap him in the simulation, saving Din. I think they're basically betting everything on the fact that Erratus is a very irrational AI, that's probably why they call him Erratus, and they're going to try and trap him in the simulation. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but I'm assuming it would work. And that's where this part of the kind of live service narrative ends. However, it is only part 1 of Season 2's narrative. There are actually 2 narrative events in Season 2 for Halo Infinite. This part is called Interference and runs until May 16th, and then on July 19th we're getting part 2, I assume part 2, which is called Alpha Pack, which I assume is going to bring more cutscenes and more narrative with it. What happens on May 16th when this interference narrative event ends? I don't know. Maybe the cutscene just disappears, maybe something happens, maybe we get another cutscene. Not quite sure, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. And so, that's the beginning of Halo Infinite's live service story, and also by extension, Season 2's story, explained and broken down. I've got to say, I do kind of like where this is going. I wasn't 100% sure about the live service narrative thing, because some games can do it quite well, and other games can have it seem really gimmicky. Like, for example, Warzones and Call of Duties, I find that so silly and gimmicky. But this is quite intriguing. I'm liking where this goes. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in Interference at the end of it, and also Alpha Pack. I've got a Season 2 review coming out in a few days, but I've got to say, having your own Spartan in these cutscenes is such a cool idea. I really like that they brought that back from Spartan Ops, and honestly, kind of broadly speaking, this entire live service narrative really does remind me of Spartan Ops. Now that might make some people's ears turn up a little bit, but hear me out. I, for years, have thought that Spartan Ops was a great idea that was just executed terribly. The levels were so boring, it just wasn't executed right. However, if they can pull this off right, it could be quite interesting long term, so we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see how it goes, but this is a pretty good start, honestly. I'm liking how this started. So, if you enjoyed this video, show your support down below with the sub button and the like and all that typical YouTube crap that everyone always begs for. And with that said, I'm going to round this video out here. I want to give a massive thank you to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support over there, as per usual, and thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you in my Infinite Season 2 review, probably part 1, in a few days.